Title: The Incredible Story of Netflix, from DVDs to Global Streaming. Welcome to today's story. In this video, you'll hear the full, inspiring journey of Netflix, the company that changed how the whole world watches movies and TV shows. This is not just a business story. It's a story about dreams, risks, innovation, and change, told in clear and natural English, perfect for listening and learning. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the incredible story of Netflix, from DVDs to global streaming. In the late 1990s, a man named Reed Hastings was feeling frustrated. He had rented a movie called Apollo 13 from a popular video rental store named Blockbuster. It was a Friday night, and he had planned to watch the movie with his wife. They enjoyed it, but a few days later, Reed realized that he had forgotten to return it on time. When he finally went back to the store, the cashier told him he owed a $40 late fee. $40, just for being late. Reed was shocked. He thought, why should I pay so much money just because I forgot to return a movie? That moment stayed in his mind. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the feeling of unfairness and frustration. At that time, in 1997, renting movies was a normal part of life in America. Most people went to Blockbuster or similar stores. They walked through aisles filled with VHS tapes and DVDs, looked at covers, read the back of the boxes, and chose something to watch. It was fun in a way, but also inconvenient. Sometimes, the movie you wanted was already rented out, sometimes, you forgot to return it. And sometimes, you lost the box. There were lines at the counter, membership cards to remember, and, the worst part, those late fees that made customers angry. Reed Hastings was not just any customer. He was a smart engineer and entrepreneur who had already founded a software company called Puratria. He loved solving problems, especially problems that made people's lives difficult. One day, Reed talked to his friend and colleague Mark Randolph. Mark was full of creative energy. He loved new technology and the idea of selling things online. Together, they started thinking. What if people could rent movies without going to a store? Mark asked. What if they could choose online and get the movies delivered to their homes? It sounded like a wild idea. The internet was still new, and online shopping wasn't common yet. Most people were afraid to use their credit cards online. But Reed and Mark were curious. They wanted to test if the idea could even work. At that time, DVDs were new technology. They were thin, shiny discs that could hold high-quality video. Unlike the big, heavy VHS tapes, DVDs were small and light, easy to send by mail. One morning, Mark went to a store and bought a CD, just to test something. He put it into a simple envelope, added a small piece of paper, and mailed it to Reed's house. A few days later, the envelope arrived. And the CD was perfectly fine. No scratches. No damage. That small test proved something powerful. If a CD could be mailed safely, so could a DVD. Reed and Mark looked at each other with excitement. This could actually work. People could order movies online, receive them by mail, and return them the same way. No late fees, no lines, no driving. It was a simple idea, but a revolutionary one. So in 1997, Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph founded a new company, Netflix. The name came from net for the internet, and Flix, a playful version of Flix, which means movies. They started small, working out of an office in Scotts Valley, California. They had just 30 employees and around 900 movie titles available when they launched their website in April 1998. At first, Netflix used a paper rental model. You went to the Netflix website, chose the DVDs you wanted, and paid a few dollars for each one. Netflix would mail the DVDs to you, and you could return them whenever you wanted. Customers could even create a list of movies they wanted to see, called a queue, and Netflix would automatically send the next movie on the list when you returned one. People liked the convenience, but it was still a new concept. Some didn't understand it. They asked, why wait for a DVD in the mail when I can just drive to Blockbuster tonight? But slowly, some customers started to see the benefit. No lines. No late fees. No embarrassment at the counter. Netflix also offered free shipping, which was unusual at the time. Reed Hastings believed that people wanted freedom and comfort. He often said, if you give people an easier way to enjoy something they already love, they will choose it. Still, the first year wasn't easy. The company wasn't making much profit. Many investors thought it was a bad idea. Mailing DVDs seemed too slow and too expensive. But Reed and Mark didn't give up. They believed in the future of the internet. They believed people would rather click than drive. They kept testing, learning, and improving. They added better packaging to protect DVDs. They made the website more user-friendly. They created faster systems for shipping and returns. By the end of 1998, Netflix had sent out hundreds of thousands of DVDs. They were small compared to Blockbuster, but their idea was spreading. Some customers began to tell their friends, "You should try Netflix, it's so easy." That kind of word-of-mouth marketing was priceless. Reed Hastings often said that one of the most valuable things a company can earn is trust. If people trust your service, they will stay with you. And Netflix was starting to earn that trust. But still, they had a big problem. People didn't rent movies often enough for Netflix to make a profit. Mailing costs were high, and some customers only rented one movie a month. Reed started thinking again. He realized that Netflix needed a system that encouraged people to rent more often without worrying about costs, and without punishing them with late fees. He didn't know it yet, but that idea would lead to the next big change, a system that would completely reshape the entertainment industry. Netflix had taken its first step. The company was alive. The idea worked. But the journey had just begun. As Reed often said later in interviews, sometimes, big revolutions start with small frustrations. And for Netflix, that frustration was a simple $40 late fee. By the year 1999, Netflix was still a young company, full of hope but struggling to survive. People liked the idea of renting DVDs online, but it wasn't growing fast enough. The company had around 300,000 customers, not bad, but not enough to make a profit. Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph were worried. They knew their idea worked, but something was missing. The system still felt too much like traditional rentals. Customers paid for each DVD separately, just like they did at a store. And many customers didn't rent often because they didn't want to pay again and again. Reed and his team started asking themselves important questions. How could they make Netflix easier? How could they make it more fun, something people would love to use all the time? Then came a breakthrough idea. Instead of charging per DVD, what if Netflix offered a subscription? A simple monthly payment that let customers rent as many DVDs as they wanted, one after another, with no due dates, no late fees, and no extra charges. It was a bold move. No company in the movie rental world had done this before. But Netflix believed in the power of freedom. In September 1999, they launched their new plan, the Netflix subscription service. For about $15.95 a month, customers could rent up to 4 DVDs at a time. They could keep them as long as they wanted, and when they returned one, Netflix would send the next movie from their list. It was simple. It was smart. And people loved it. Suddenly, customers didn't have to think about money every time they wanted to watch a movie. They could relax and enjoy. Netflix became part of their routine, like having a personal movie library at home. The system also helped Netflix understand its users better. They collected ratings, reviews, and preferences. Customers rated movies with stars, 1 to 5, and Netflix started to learn what each person liked. If someone enjoyed romantic comedies, the system began recommending more of them. If someone preferred action movies or documentaries, Netflix noticed that too. Soon, Netflix created a powerful recommendation engine called CineMatch. It used algorithms, a kind of smart computer math, to predict what people would like to watch next. This made Netflix feel personal, even before streaming existed. People began to say, "Netflix really knows me." That emotional connection helped the company grow quickly. By 2000, Netflix had over 300,000 subscribers. They were finally getting attention, not just from customers, but also from competitors. And one competitor was especially important, Blockbuster. At that time, Blockbuster was still a giant. It had thousands of stores all across America and millions of loyal customers. Netflix, in comparison, was tiny. But Reed Hastings wasn't afraid. He decided to do something bold, maybe even desperate. In the summer of 2000, Reed flew to Dallas, Texas, where Blockbuster's headquarters were located. He and his team carried a simple proposal: Netflix would sell their company to Blockbuster for $50 million. In exchange, Netflix would handle Blockbuster's online business, while Blockbuster would promote Netflix in its stores. Reed and Mark thought it was a perfect match. Blockbuster had money and brand power, Netflix had technology and ideas. But when they presented their offer, something unexpected happened. The Blockbuster executives laughed. They didn't believe in online rentals. They thought the internet was just a passing trend. They said, "That's a very cute business, but it's not going anywhere." Reed and Mark left the meeting embarrassed but also motivated. As they walked out of the building, Reed turned to Mark and said quietly, "Someday, they're going to regret this." That rejection became fuel. It made Netflix stronger. Back in California, the team worked even harder. They focused on customer satisfaction. They improved the packaging, made faster delivery systems, and added more DVDs. Every detail mattered, from the red envelopes to the smooth website design. But the next few years weren't easy. The dot-com bubble, a big internet business crash, hit in 2000. Many online companies closed down. Investors became afraid to support tech startups. Netflix was losing money every month. Some people said it wouldn't survive the year. Reed Hastings had to make painful decisions, including laying off staff and reducing costs. But even during those hard times, one thing never changed: Netflix's commitment to the customer. They believed that if people loved the experience, success would follow. They focused on honesty, transparency, and service. Their red envelopes became a symbol of trust. Customers knew that when a red envelope arrived, a good movie night was waiting. In 2001, Netflix started offering a free trial to attract new users. People could try the service for a month without paying. Many who tried it never went back to the old way. They became subscribers, loyal ones. Slowly, Netflix's customer base began to grow again. By 2002, Netflix reached nearly 1 million subscribers. That same year, the company went public on the Nasdaq Stock Exchange, selling its first shares for about $15 each. It was a huge milestone. Netflix finally had enough money to expand and improve. The subscription model had worked. It changed not only Netflix's future but also how millions of people thought about entertainment. Instead of paying for single items, people discovered they liked access more than ownership. They didn't need to buy or rent one movie, they wanted unlimited access to many. That idea, simple yet powerful, would later inspire many other companies: Spotify for music, YouTube Premium for videos, and even modern streaming services. But at that time, Netflix didn't know how big their idea would become. They were just trying to stay alive and keep customers happy. And as they looked toward the future, one question started to appear in their minds: if people loved receiving DVDs by mail, what if one day, they could watch movies instantly, without waiting for the mail at all? It sounded impossible in 2002. The internet was too slow, and technology wasn't ready. But Reed Hastings was a visionary. He believed that someday, technology would catch up to their dream. And when it did, Netflix would be ready. The subscription model had saved Netflix from failure. But an even bigger revolution was waiting, one that would soon change the way the entire world watched movies and television forever. The early 2000s were a dangerous time for internet companies. Across Silicon Valley, businesses were falling apart. The great dot-com bubble had burst. Many startups had grown too quickly, spending money they didn't have, and now the investors were gone. Websites that were once exciting disappeared overnight. Office lights went out, and for sale signs appeared on empty buildings. Netflix was one of the few companies that managed to stay alive, but just barely. The company was still losing money every month. They had a good product and loyal customers, but the costs of mailing DVDs were huge. Reed Hastings and his team were under pressure. Every day, they looked for ways to save money. They redesigned the red envelopes to be lighter and cheaper. They improved the return system to make it faster and more reliable. They created partnerships with the U.S. Postal Service to handle mail more efficiently. But the biggest thing that saved Netflix during those years was something more than cost-cutting. It was innovation, and a deep focus on the customer experience. Reed Hastings had always believed that people would support a company that truly cared about them. So he made sure Netflix was not just a service, it was a relationship. Every DVD arrived on time. Every movie was clean and ready to play. Every customer got exactly what they ordered. And if there was ever a mistake, Netflix fixed it immediately, often with a kind apology or a free rental. That kind of care built trust. And trust is powerful. While other companies were closing, Netflix was quietly improving. They used data to learn about their users. They paid attention to what people watched, rated, and enjoyed. Soon, Netflix's smart computer system, called CineMatch, began to play an important role. CineMatch used algorithms to study patterns. If you liked one romantic comedy, it might suggest another one. If you loved action movies, it would recommend similar titles. This made people feel understood. Netflix seemed to know them, like a friendly movie expert who always picked the right film. That personal connection kept customers coming back. By 2003, Netflix was still small compared to Blockbuster, but it was growing steadily. They reached 1.5 million subscribers, and their stock value began to rise. The team could finally breathe a little. But challenges were not over. Blockbuster, the same company that once laughed at Reed Hastings, was starting to feel threatened. They noticed that more and more people were switching to Netflix. In 2004, Blockbuster decided to fight back. They launched their own DVD by mail service, copying Netflix's idea almost exactly. They even offered free rentals and tried to use their big brand name to attract customers. For a short time, people thought Blockbuster might win. After all, it was still huge, with more than 9,000 stores worldwide. But there was one big difference: Netflix cared about its customers, Blockbuster cared about its stores. While Blockbuster tried to balance two businesses, physical stores and mail rentals, Netflix focused only on one thing: making online rentals better. Reed Hastings often said, "We don't need to do everything. We just need to do one thing better than anyone else." And that's exactly what they did. Netflix made small, smart improvements all the time. They redesigned their website to make it faster. They added more movie titles. They improved search options. They made it easier for users to find what they loved. They also introduced something fun, the 5-star rating system, which helped people express how much they enjoyed each movie. Those little stars became part of the Netflix experience. Customers didn't just watch movies, they became part of a growing community of movie lovers. By 2005, Netflix had reached over 4 million subscribers in the United States. And while Blockbuster's online program struggled to catch up, Netflix was already thinking ahead. Reed Hastings believed that the future wasn't about mailing DVDs. He saw a world where people could watch movies instantly, through the internet. At that time, it sounded like science fiction. Internet connections were slow, and streaming technology barely existed. But Reed was patient. He often told his team, "Technology will catch up, we just need to be ready when it does." In meetings, he encouraged new ideas. He asked questions like, "What will movie watching look like 5 years from now? What if people could click a button and watch instantly?" Some team members smiled politely. Others thought he was dreaming too big. But the idea stayed alive. In 2006, Netflix introduced a $1 million prize competition called the Netflix Prize. They invited programmers and data scientists from around the world to improve their movie recommendation system. The goal was to make CineMatch 10% more accurate. It was a creative way to bring innovation from outside the company, and it showed Netflix's commitment to constant learning. During those years, Netflix's reputation grew. People started to see it as more than a DVD rental service. It was becoming a technology company, a smart, friendly, and forward-thinking brand. Meanwhile, Blockbuster was in trouble. They had heavy debt, expensive stores, and falling profits. They couldn't move as fast as Netflix could. Their old business model was dying. By 2007, Netflix had mailed its billionth DVD, a major milestone. The red envelopes had become iconic. They were part of American life. But Reed Hastings knew it was time to move beyond the envelope. It was time to bring his dream of instant watching to life. He and his team started working on a new project, one that would soon change everything. In early 2007, Netflix announced the arrival of a new feature called Watch Now. For the first time ever, users could stream movies and TV shows directly on their computers, no mail, no waiting. The quality wasn't perfect, and the selection was small, but it worked. It was the beginning of a revolution. After surviving the storm of the dot-com crash, fighting off Blockbuster, and building trust with millions of happy customers, Netflix had found its next chapter. The company that started with a $40 late fee was about to lead the world into a new era of entertainment. By the year 2007, Netflix had already survived many challenges. The company had grown from a small DVD by mail service into a household name in America. Millions of red envelopes were being sent and returned every week. People loved Netflix because it was easy, fast, and fair. There were no late fees, no long lines, and no stress. But Reed Hastings, the founder, wasn't satisfied. He often said, "If we stop innovating, someone else will take our place." Reed believed the future of entertainment was not in the mailbox, it was online. He wanted people to be able to watch a movie instantly, without waiting for a DVD to arrive. In the early 2000s, that idea seemed impossible. Internet connections were slow, computers were basic, and most people didn't have the technology to stream video. But by 2006 and 2007, things were starting to change. Internet speed was improving, and more homes had high-speed broadband connections. Reed saw the opportunity and moved quickly. In January 2007, Netflix officially launched Watch Now, a new feature that allowed subscribers to stream movies and TV shows instantly on their computers. For the first time ever, you didn't have to wait for the mail. You could just click a movie and start watching. At the beginning, there were limitations. Only about 1,000 movies were available, and users could only watch on their PCs. There were no apps, no smart TVs, no phones, and no tablets yet. Still, it was the beginning of something big, a new way to enjoy entertainment. Many people were amazed. The idea of watching online felt fresh and exciting. You could stop, pause, and continue later, total control in your hands. Netflix was no longer just a DVD rental company. It was becoming a streaming company, a digital service that let you watch what you wanted, when you wanted. It was the birth of on-demand entertainment. At first, traditional movie studios didn't take Netflix seriously. They saw it as a small internet company that mailed DVDs. But as streaming grew, they started to notice something important. People were spending more time watching Netflix than watching cable TV. Netflix began to sign deals with Hollywood studios to license more content. The library expanded quickly, classic films, documentaries, and popular TV shows started appearing on the platform. People could now watch Friends, The Office, and Breaking Bad right from their laptops. As streaming improved, Netflix made another smart move. They began developing apps for game consoles like Xbox and PlayStation. Then they created versions for smart TVs, tablets, and smartphones. Suddenly, Netflix was everywhere. You could watch it on your computer, in your living room, or even on the bus. It became part of daily life, just a click away. In 2008, Netflix made another surprising decision. They ended their partnership with Walmart, which had tried to compete in DVD rentals. Netflix didn't want to focus on DVDs anymore. The future was streaming, and Reed Hastings wanted to move all in. Around the same time, the company faced another big competitor, Blockbuster Online. But Blockbuster was in trouble. They were losing money, closing stores, and trying to catch up with technology they didn't understand. By 2010, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy. The company that once laughed at Netflix's $50 million offer was now gone. Netflix had officially won the battle. But even as they celebrated, Reed Hastings reminded his team, "This is not the end, this is the beginning of something much bigger." As Netflix grew, they faced new challenges. Streaming large amounts of video required powerful servers and expensive licenses. They needed to make deals with internet providers and movie studios. Every country had different rules and different tastes. But Netflix had a vision: to make entertainment simple, personal, and global. In 2011, Netflix expanded into Canada, its first international market. The next year, they entered Latin America. Then came Europe. The world was opening up, and Netflix was ready to connect it through stories. That same year, however, Netflix made a mistake that nearly destroyed everything. They decided to separate the DVD by mail business from the streaming business. The DVD service would be called Quickster, and streaming would stay as Netflix. Customers would have to pay for both separately. The reaction was immediate and terrible. Thousands of users canceled their subscriptions. People were angry and confused. Netflix's stock price dropped almost 80% in a few months. Reed Hastings took responsibility. He publicly apologized and reversed the decision. It was a painful lesson, but also an important one. Netflix realized that their real identity was not about how people watched movies, but why they watched them. People came to Netflix for comfort, relaxation, and connection. They didn't want confusion, they wanted simplicity. So the company focused again on what it did best, making entertainment easy and enjoyable. By 2012, Netflix had recovered. Their streaming service was growing faster than ever. People were cutting their cable subscriptions and choosing Netflix instead. A new term appeared: binge watching. It described the habit of watching many episodes of a show in one sitting. Netflix had made it possible by releasing entire seasons of shows at once. This idea changed how television worked forever. No more waiting a week for the next episode. Now, viewers could enjoy stories at their own pace. The world of entertainment was changing rapidly, and Netflix was leading the way. But Reed Hastings and his team knew they couldn't just rely on other people's shows forever. If studios decided to pull their content, Netflix could lose everything. So Reed asked another big question: what if we create our own shows, our own originals? That question would lead Netflix into the next great chapter of its story, the one that would transform it from a streaming service into a global storytelling powerhouse. By the year 2013, Netflix had already changed how people watched movies and shows. Streaming was no longer new, it was becoming a normal part of life. People didn't have to wait for mail or buy DVDs anymore. They could just open Netflix, click play, and relax. But Reed Hastings, the co-founder of Netflix, wasn't satisfied yet. He wanted Netflix to be more than a place where people watched other studios' movies. He wanted Netflix to become a creator, a studio that made its own shows and films. He often said, "If we want to be the future of television, we can't depend on other people's content. We must create our own." At first, it sounded risky. Producing original content cost millions of dollars. What if no one liked it? What if it failed? But Netflix was ready to take that risk. In 2013, Netflix released its first major original series, a political drama called House of Cards. It starred Kevin Spacey and Robin Wright and was based on a British show of the same name, but Netflix did something revolutionary. Instead of releasing one episode a week, they released the entire season all at once. People could watch the whole story in one weekend. This was new, and it changed everything. Millions of people started binge-watching House of Cards. They couldn't stop talking about it. Social media exploded with reactions, memes, and discussions. For the first time, an online streaming company had created a show as powerful as traditional TV networks. Critics loved it. It was nominated for major awards, even Emmy Awards, something unheard of for an internet show. Netflix had proven it could compete with Hollywood. Reed Hastings smiled and said, "This is just the beginning." After House of Cards, Netflix continued to produce new shows. In 2013, they released Orange is the New Black, a drama comedy about women in prison. It was funny, emotional, and deeply human. Audiences loved the diverse characters and powerful storytelling. It became another huge success. Then came Narcos, a thrilling series about the rise of Pablo Escobar and the drug cartels in Colombia. It attracted viewers from all around the world, especially in Latin America. In 2016, Netflix released a show that would become a global phenomenon, Stranger Things. It told the story of a group of kids in the 1980s who discovered a dark, mysterious world called the Upside Down. It mixed nostalgia, mystery, and heartwarming friendship. The world fell in love with it. The child actors became stars, and the series became part of pop culture. By this time, Netflix wasn't just a streaming service, it had become a storytelling powerhouse. Netflix's goal was clear: to offer something for everyone, everywhere. The company started investing in shows and films from different countries. In Spain, they produced Money Heist, La Casa de Papel, a thrilling crime drama that became one of the most watched shows in the world. In Germany, they made Dark, a mysterious science fiction story about time travel. In Korea, they produced shows like Kingdom and later Squid Game, which became global sensations. For the first time in history, people from different countries were watching the same shows, in different languages, on one platform. Netflix was connecting the world through stories. It wasn't just about entertainment anymore. It was about culture, emotion, and shared experience. But behind the success, Netflix faced big challenges. Producing shows was expensive, billions of dollars every year. Competitors were rising fast. Companies like Amazon Prime Video, Hulu, and later Disney+, HBO Max, and Apple TV+ started entering the market. Everyone wanted to be part of the streaming revolution. To stay ahead, Netflix had to innovate even faster. They began using data and algorithms to understand what people liked. They studied viewing patterns, what people watched, paused, and rewatched. This helped them recommend movies and create new shows that matched the audience's taste. It was like Netflix could read your mind, but really, it was reading your habits. This personalized experience made Netflix feel unique. When you opened the app, it felt like it was designed just for you. As Netflix grew, it also faced criticism. Some people said that binge watching was unhealthy. Others argued that Netflix was spending too much on content and taking on debt. But Reed Hastings believed in the long-term vision. He often said, "We are not trying to make quick money. We are trying to build the future of entertainment." And indeed, Netflix was changing not only what people watched but how they watched. Families no longer gathered around TV channels, they chose their own shows, on their own schedule. People watched on phones, laptops, tablets, even in airplanes. Entertainment had become personal and portable. Netflix became a verb. People started saying, "Let's Netflix tonight." By 2017, Netflix had reached over 100 million subscribers worldwide. Its content was being watched in more than 190 countries. The famous red N logo became a symbol of modern entertainment. Netflix had gone from sending DVDs in red envelopes to streaming stories to the entire planet. And it wasn't stopping there. The next big step was to make films, not just shows. In 2018, Netflix released Roma, a black and white Mexican film by Alfonso Cuarón. It won multiple Academy Awards, including Best Director. Then came The Irishman by Martin Scorsese, Marriage Story, and The Power of the Dog. Netflix was no longer the outsider, it had become a respected name in the film industry. Hollywood had once laughed at Netflix. Now, it was working for Netflix. By the end of the 2010s, Netflix had completely transformed entertainment. It had redefined television, challenged movie theaters, and connected the world with stories that spoke every language. But as streaming became the new normal, competition grew stronger. Disney, Warner Brothers, and many others pulled their content from Netflix to start their own platforms. The streaming war had officially begun. Netflix would have to fight harder than ever to keep its crown. Still, one thing was clear: Netflix had already changed the world forever. And in the next chapter, it would face its biggest challenges yet: rising competition, changing habits, and the global pandemic that tested every company on Earth. By the time 2020 arrived, Netflix had become a global giant. It had more than 167 million subscribers in nearly every country on Earth. People were watching Netflix in more than 30 languages, on phones, TVs, tablets, and even airplanes. Netflix had achieved what once seemed impossible: it had become part of daily life. People didn't just watch Netflix, they talked about it, shared it, and lived it. But success always brings competition. And now, that competition was stronger than ever. For years, Netflix had been almost alone in the streaming world. But around 2018 and 2019, everything started to change. Big entertainment companies like Disney, Warner Brothers, and NBC Universal decided they didn't want to license their movies to Netflix anymore. Instead, they wanted to start their own streaming services. Disney launched Disney+, Warner Brothers created HBO Max, and Apple introduced Apple TV+. Amazon's Prime Video was already growing fast. Suddenly, there were too many options for viewers. People had to choose between many platforms, each with its own shows and movies. This new competition became known as the streaming wars. Netflix was no longer the only player, it was one of many. And to stay ahead, it needed to offer something special. Netflix decided to go bigger than ever on original content. Instead of depending on other studios, it would make its own films, series, documentaries, and even animated shows. In 2020 alone, Netflix released hundreds of new titles. There was something for everyone: romantic comedies, thrillers, dramas, and family shows. Hits like The Crown, The Witcher, Money Heist, The Queen's Gambit, and Bridgerton captured millions of hearts around the world. Each series had something unique: beautiful visuals, emotional storytelling, and unforgettable characters. Netflix also started producing more international content. From India came Sacred Games, from France Lupin, from Korea Kingdom, and later Squid Game. These shows weren't just popular locally, they became global sensations. For the first time in history, a show made in one country could be watched and loved by people in every corner of the world. Language was no longer a barrier. Netflix provided subtitles and dubbing in dozens of languages. Entertainment had become universal. In 2020, the world faced a crisis: the COVID-19 pandemic. People stayed home, countries went into lockdown, and cinemas were closed. Suddenly, everyone was looking for comfort and distraction, and Netflix became that comfort. Families watched movies together, friends had online viewing parties, and lonely people found company in their favorite characters. Streaming hours reached record highs. During those months, Netflix released shows like Tiger King, The Queen's Gambit, and Too Hot to Handle. Each became a cultural phenomenon, people everywhere were talking about them. In 1 year, Netflix gained more than 36 million new subscribers, the biggest growth in its history. But the team knew this boom wouldn't last forever. As the world reopened, people would go outside again. Still, Netflix had proven one thing: in difficult times, stories can bring people together. After the pandemic, Netflix faced a new reality. Competition was tougher, production costs were higher, and many people were canceling their subscriptions to save money. In 2022, for the first time in 10 years, Netflix lost subscribers. Its stock price dropped sharply, and some people began to wonder, had Netflix peaked? The company acted quickly. It introduced new plans, including a cheaper subscription with ads. It also began to control password sharing, encouraging users to have their own accounts. These changes were controversial, but necessary for survival. And slowly, Netflix began to recover again. The company focused on quality storytelling and fresh ideas. It released global hits like Wednesday, The Night Agent, All of Us Are Dead, and One Piece. These shows brought new energy and new audiences. Netflix also expanded into games, interactive content, and live events. They weren't just a streaming platform anymore, they were becoming a complete entertainment universe. By 2024, Netflix had over 260 million subscribers around the world. It had offices in dozens of countries and employed thousands of creative people, writers, directors, producers, and artists. Every month, Netflix released content made in different languages and cultures. From Japan to Brazil, from Nigeria to Germany, stories were being shared across borders. Reed Hastings stepped back from his CEO role in 2023, handing leadership to a new team. But his vision remained the same: to entertain the world. That was always Netflix's mission, to connect people through stories that inspire, move, and entertain. And that mission continues today. When Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph started Netflix in 1997, they couldn't imagine how far it would go. They just wanted to make renting movies easier. They mailed DVDs from a small office, never dreaming their idea would one day reshape global entertainment. But over time, Netflix became something much bigger, a symbol of innovation, courage, and storytelling. It showed that even small ideas can change the world if you believe in them, improve them, and never stop learning. Netflix taught people to think differently, to imagine a world where entertainment is not limited by time, place, or language. And even today, as new competitors rise, Netflix keeps moving forward, adapting, experimenting, and dreaming. Because that's what Netflix has always done best: change with the times, and tell stories that matter. Netflix's story is not just about technology or business. It's about imagination, resilience, and connection. It's about how stories, whether funny, sad, or thrilling, can unite people across the world. From a DVD in a red envelope to a global streaming platform, Netflix's journey reminds us that success doesn't happen overnight. It happens when you keep moving, keep learning, and keep believing in your vision, even when others doubt you. And so, the red end continues to shine on millions of screens, reminding us of one simple truth: no matter where we live or what language we speak, we all love a good story. This is the story of Netflix, how one small idea changed the way the world watches. And that was the full story of Netflix, a story about dreams, courage, and change. From a small DVD company to a global streaming leader, Netflix showed the world that innovation begins with a single idea, and the bravery to make it real. It taught us that failure is not the end, but a lesson. That creativity has no borders. And that stories, whether told in English, Spanish, Korean, or any other language, have the power to connect us all. So the next time you watch a movie or series on Netflix, remember, behind every story you see, there is another story. The story of how Netflix itself became one of the greatest storytellers in the world. Thank you for listening to The Full Story of Netflix, a special English story for learners and dreamers everywhere. Keep learning, keep listening, and keep believing in your own story.